Hey, this is Hans from Request for Music, and today the 2 VCO comes with an update. And to show you a couple of things, I got a couple of modules set up here. I've got the multi-oscilloscope from Weevil. I've got my 1 LFO. I've got my 2 VCO. I have 2 modules in here that are not yet in the store, which is a separate VCA. I got the delay, obviously, that has just hit the shop, and I've got the mixer, an 8-channel stereo mixer. That is also not in the shop yet. So the signal of the 2 VCO gets its pitch, obviously, from the transport module, or from this module in Cherry Audio, the block where the pitch and the gate and stuff like that comes from. The gate is driving the VCA. The VCA is pretty ordinary thing. The only thing is that it has an envelope built in that I'm using, and that's just because I didn't want the sound of the VCO to sound all the time. So that's why it's in there. So anyway, I've got one output of the VCO going into the VCA, and one output of the VCA going into the delay. The delay has 2 outputs, and that's going into the mixer. I'm not even sure if I have to use the mixer anyway, but it's in there if I need to. 2 VCO, it's set at the sine wave, because I'm going to do the basic stuff first, and I'll probably do a couple of separate videos for the update stuff. The people who have the VCO will probably see some extra stuff in the middle here, and a couple of extra inputs. I think it's quite a long time since I've been working on this on and off, so it took some time to get it out. Anyway, pitch is going in here. So first of all, it's just giving a sine wave, and since it's a 2 VCO, there's actually 2 VCOs running. And one of the things that I actually updated right now is that there's an oscillator mix knob here on the bottom, and with actually the oscillator mix only did something when you had both of the outputs connected, and now it changed that. So if you have one oscillator connected, and you will hear that because there are 2 VCOs in there, and it can have phase problems. So if you want just the one oscillator, you can just dial it to either the left or the right, so you have one of both oscillators, and in the middle they will add up and give you phasing sounds if that's what you want anyway. So let's scale this up a bit. So this is just a sine wave, and obviously if I select one of the other ones, this is just a triangle wave, and I got the VCA set up in a very simple way, just sustain full and a bit of release, so it stops, and the delay has average settings as I normally do when I want to have sort of a lush delay. So it's setting at 500 almost and 750 almost for the second channel. And even when you select only one channel, or you connect only one channel, both of them work. So you can do your settings here. It has a slight mix in there, and has some feedback on both, so you hear that it's really operating that way. So that's basically that part. And now it's a triangle wave, and also because of the phase shifting, you see that you already get some weird sounds. So let's dial it to only one side, so you can see that it's really a normal triangle wave, and that the other one was really a normal sine wave. But of course you can mix those 2 together, and then you can dial the mix by changing the volume, which this is for that specific wave. So you can dial just a couple of more harmonics in by using a bit more of that triangle, or if you want really more, you switch on the saw wave. First of all, let's show it as it normally is. So that's a normal saw wave, and obviously you can combine that with, for instance, a sine wave. So you can decide how that functions and what kind of harmonics you get in there. And you can go even further by doing a square wave, and the square wave obviously has a pulse width that you can set here with the yellow knob. Has broad settings from almost 0 to 0 the other side. Sorry. So pretty easy to dial the tones in that you want. Combine that with a saw wave, and you get that kind of stuff. And let's get back to the sawtooth and dial it to medium. Dial the second one in. And because those two oscillators don't really are driven in sync, they don't run in sync altogether, I can detune the second oscillator, and that's obviously gives you a wider sound. So something like that. And since I always like to use some glide, I have a glide knob in here, the blue one, and that is set to oscillator 1, so it's going to glide oscillator 1. So if I dial that up a bit, and obviously you can still dial one of those oscillators out. So if I dial to the second oscillator side, I won't hear the glide, but I can mix it. I can still dial it as I want, so do something like that. For the rest, there's obviously if I select the second one and would connect the second one out, it's actually taking both outputs of each oscillator and puts that in the specific oscillator output part. So now you got a wider sound, and then the detune part isn't that obvious. They are detuned still, but you hear it better when it's a lot narrower range, so to speak. So if I take this out again, you can hear what it sounds like. And so this is what it's basically with just a normal sound, and obviously, or a normal wave from just a sine, and sure as I say, I can dial the square wave in that, take the pulse width, and obviously there's modulation input for that, so that's why the 1LFO is here. So take that in and have it so you can tell that the pulse width is doing something, and obviously if I change this up, change the speed, so let's go to a higher. So yeah, well, that's basically the normal thing. Only is that a couple of things that are in here are about fixed and syncing. So if the fixing is off, and obviously there's no fixed oscillator, but if I dial it, or if I switch it to oscillator 1, then the oscillator 1 part of this is going to be in a specific and And if I do it the other way around, if I do it to number the other one is not fixed, and so you also have for the glide the option. Let's switch it off again. Yeah, for glide the oscillator 1 being is gliding. If I switch it to the middle, both of them are gliding, and if I do it to the top side, only the second one is gliding. So that depends on how you work with it. Underneath the detunes, let's set the glide off for a second. And let's take the pulse width modulation out there again. Let's just take the saw wave. So I've got this detune part here that decides how much the second oscillator is going to detune from the first. But not only that, because there's a sort of a multiplier here. So if I just dial it a bit, it's only going to be a very short or very small shift in detuning. But if I dial the multiplier up, I can get to a higher range. And then obviously if I dial this in, and I can go even further because this multiplies that range. So if I dial and if you would be very experimental inclined, you might want to modulate that even. So if I take the sine wave of my 1LFO into this, which is the modulation input for the multiplier, I can use that to modulate this. So if you if you dial that in a nice way with maybe not too much multiplication, you could even use it as sort of just a vibrato on one of the or on the second oscillator. Because otherwise, if you would want to do a frequency modulation kind of thing, then obviously you would have to connect this to the normal frequency modulation input, which is this one. But obviously then both of them would go their same directions. Got a very high level, so let's put this up to frequency, to vibrato style. Maybe even a bit too high, but still, you know, you can do that way. But again, if I would not connect it there, but would connect it to this, then you would only frequency modulate one of those oscillators, number 2 to be exact. And to thicken the overall sound, you could always dial in the sine wave, change back the overall volume a bit. And what were the things that were already in number 1? There's also analog digital. So if I go to, let's say, if I go to the square wave, for instance, and go to only 1, you will see that if I have my pulse width centered, other value, come on. I seem to be dialing in the wrong way. Anyway, this is nearly centered, I guess. And obviously can take the level up a bit, and let's look at this way. In the analog version, there's this sort of overshoot. In the digital version, it's a complete real square. And that goes for the sine waves and that stuff as well. So there is a difference between those oscillators, as you can tell. So let's look at the sawtooth, the digital version, and the analog version. So there's a difference between those. Last thing that is in here that I haven't been using except for the sync. I'm sure that you know what syncing sounds like, so I'll leave that out for now. The phase modulation, I could actually take the second oscillator in here and I could drive this sound from the other oscillator, and you can get stranger kinds of waves going on there, and that's actually what this middle part is for as well. But let's get another video out for that. I hope you do enjoy this. Obviously there's a couple of days demo for 2VCO. If you don't have it yet, if you do have the module, then obviously it's updated to this latest version. So I'll be back later. Cheers, bye bye.